that the Porsche Cayman is most regularly compared to its £60,000 911 stablemate rather than other £40,000 sports coupes offers an insight into how far ahead of its rivals this car really is. Its classic mid-engined rear-wheel drive layout has been supplemented in this improved version by more advanced engines and options that include a high-tech PDK twin-clutch semi-automatic gearbox and a limited slip differential. There's also sharper handling, more performance and better economy, so if you're looking for a coupe in this class, it isn't hard to know exactly where to start. Though Porsche is best identified with the 911 rear-engine sports car, the company does actually have just as much heritage in mid-engine machinery. The very first car to bear the Porsche name was, after all, a mid-engine sports car, the legendary 356 No. 1. And back in the 1930s, Ferdinand Porsche himself created the mid-engined Auto Union Grand Prix races. It's slightly surprising then to think that when this car, the Cayman, was launched back in 2005, it was the first mid-engine sports car the Stuttgart marque had sold since the 914 of 1969. Of course, Porsche had been selling their mid-engine Boxster Roadster for nearly a decade before this, the car that provides most of the basics behind this Cayman. Now, Porsche determinedly refutes suggestions that the Cayman is nothing more than a Boxster with a roof, but that's essentially what it boils down to. Early commentators judged this model as nearly perfect, but in need of the small power hike and sports automatic gearbox option that at the time would have taken it uncomfortably close to Porsche's 911 flagship. Now that the 911 has itself benefited from both these things, there's room for Cayman perfection to be realised. Is it like a 911? That's what most people want to know about this car's driving experience. And in some ways you could say that it's better. Certainly it's slightly more accessible for the inexperienced. And if you're just starting on the Porsche ownership ladder, then a couple of years in a Cayman would be very useful before graduating onto a 911. Many are so satisfied they never do. Here's a car so pliable, so forgiving, that even if you play with the steering where you shouldn't, power on in the middle of a slippery corner, for example, it'll just shrug its shoulders and work with you. In some ways, I've found that this takes some of the fun out of the experience, but you can't help admiring it. Now, much of the credit for this goes down to the industry-leading Porsche stability management system, now further improved with brake preloading, which primes the brakes in anticipation if you lift off the throttle suddenly. In the original Cayman models, this almost excessive competence tempted you to wonder what would happen with the extra power that Porsche didn't want to give it in case it harmed 911 sales. In 2009, when this improved Cayman was announced, we had our answer. The base 2.9 litre model now featured 265 brake horsepower, a 20 brake horsepower increase, while this 3.4 litre Cayman S now had 315 brake horsepower, that's 25 horsepower up, courtesy of smarter direct injection engine technology that also rather pleasingly boarded a sweeter, throatier exhaust note. Handling is further refined too, with tweaks made to the spring rates, the dampers and the anti-roll bar settings to match the increased performance on offer. Plus, enthusiasts like me can at last specify the limited slip differential that Porsche always used to claim that this car didn't need, as well as active damping and Sport Plus a racing gear shift pattern with launch control that can knock 0.2 off the 0 to 62 miles an hour time. Thus equipped, a Cayman S will sprint from rest to 62 miles an hour in just 4.9 seconds, the same as you'd achieve in a 911 Carrera S that would cost you around £18,000 more. That's assuming you've ticked the box on the Cayman for the optional PDK semi-automatic twin-clutch transmission that we first saw on the 911. Now, this hydraulically activated transmission uses twin clutches that work on the odd and even gears respectively, pre-selecting them smoothly so that the next gear is engaged even before you've left the last one. It's a big improvement on the old Tiptronic automatic option, but aside from the cost, there are a couple of points that count against it. One is the rather counterintuitive action of the steering wheel buttons that act as kind of paddles to enable you to kind of manually control the system. The other is the excellence of the standard 6-speed manual gearbox that's now supplied across the Cayman range to all buyers and should be the default option for all but urban dwellers. The improved Cayman I'm looking at here features small but significant improvements over the original, not least in the fact that it's about 10 kilograms lighter. That's despite standards of build quality that surpass even those of the obsessive engineers at Audi. Buyers of this version get these headlamp units with built-in indicators that are similar to those from the Carrera GT supercar. Plus you've got in vogue LED lighting for the front side lights and also the lamps at the rear. Plus, like most Porsche models, there's a movable rear spoiler that deploys over 75 miles an hour. Inside, the cabin is basically the same as Porsche's Boxster, which means that unlike a 911, you only get 2 seats. Now, those that see the 911's rather cramped 2 rear berths as irrelevant should swap from Cayman to 911 for a week and just see how often they throw a jacket or a briefcase in the back, or, as in my case, carry young children. Now, without this option, Cayman customers must distribute their luggage between a 150-litre section in the nose and a 260-litre section under the tailgate. Neither front or rear boot is especially large, and owners would do well to buy the Porsche luggage set because it makes very efficient use of the space that is available. The driving position is just about perfect thanks to the adjustable seat height and wheel adjustment here, although those rather over-familiar with the offerings of Colonel Sanders might struggle to fit into these rather tight optional sports seats. List prices suggest that you'll pay somewhere between £38,000 and £48,000 for your Cayman once you've allowed for a few essential extras. Now, you'll need to think carefully whether the £6,000 premium that Porsche asks for the S model over the standard 2.9 really is worth a 0 to 62 mile an hour time that's just 0.8 seconds quicker. In some ways, choosing between Cayman 2.9 and Cayman S is the easiest part of the buying decision. Prior to that, you'll have had to trawl through quite a long list of potential rivals. Obvious premium competitors include Audi's TT-RS, which slots price-wise between the 2 Cayman variants, and Mercedes' SLK 55 AMG, which costs slightly more. Both are quicker than the Cayman in a straight line, but not around corners. Or you could save £10,000 or so and pretty much rival Cayman performance in a Nissan 370Z. But again, the same handling caveat applies, and you'll lose much of your saving when resale time comes. But let's assume you've decided on a Cayman. Then you've got the choice of manual gearbox or this semi-automatic PDK unit, the option of the Sport Chrono package with its launch control and stopwatch, or indeed the endless options catalogue. Delve too deeply into that and the nagging issue in the back of your mind perhaps that maybe you should have spent another £18,000 and bought a 911 will come even more clearly to the fore. Even Porsche has to be seen to be green these days, and the latest Cayman includes plenty of features designed to keep running costs down through improved efficiency. The direct injection technology on the Cayman S helps, as does the optional PDK gearbox. Now, with PDK fitted, the standard Cayman returns 31 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 214 grams per kilometre of CO2. Also with PDK, the Cayman S manages just over 30 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 221 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is really excellent for a car of this sort of pace. What else do you need to know? Well, insurance costs between 18 and 19, and residual values, well, they're much less painful. You should return between 57 and 61% of your original purchase price after 3 years and 36,000 miles. Whether this improved Cayman can finally upstage its pricier 911 stablemate, or whether indeed this is the car that a modern 911 really should be, well, I can't help feeling that these are kind of irrelevant questions. If you like one of these Porsches, you'll probably be unconvinced by the other, with fundamental differences that are small but highly significant. What's not in doubt is that the Cayman makes the dilemma of where to spend a sports car budget limited to £40,000 about as straightforward as it can be. True, it's not cheap. True, there are more powerful rivals that cost the same. But it's also true that for the money, nothing else offers as complete a sports car driving experience.